Hello everybody, it is so good to be back on video. I am back from my trip to Melbourne. I ran my Fearless and Free workshop down there on Monday the 26th of August. I flew down the Sunday the day before on the 25th and I've just come back on Monday this week, which was September 2nd I think from memory. So I spent a glorious week in Melbourne at the tail end of August, which was not the warmest time of the year to visit Melbourne for a Queenslander, but I survived. I managed to take some beautiful, delightful, glorious blue skies and white fluffy clouds down with me. It was still a little cold and a little fresh, but it was absolutely amazing. So I just want to tell you a little bit about the Intuitive Intelligence Teacher Training, which was the 4-day live event that I attended down there whilst I was in Melbourne, which was the original reason for the trip. And since I was going anyway, I decided to run my workshop whilst I was down there as well. So I have done the first part, the live component part of the Intuitive Intelligence Teacher Training. For those of you who are familiar, you'll know that that is with Ricky Jane Adams. She is the principal of the Institute for Intuitive Intelligence. That is where I have done this program myself. I've done the 12-week initiate program, and I've also completed the 12-month third level program with the Institute as well. So if you've been following me for a little while, then you may already be familiar with all of that. Forgive me. But for those of you who aren't aware, this is a program. The teacher training that I've done is a program for the third level. It's a prerequisite for the third level. So if you have an interest and you've been following my journey and it has piqued your interest and you're curious about the 12-month program to do the certification to become an intuitive guide, which is this beautiful certificate that I've got here, if that has piqued your interest, then the initiate program, which is what I attended the training, I had to put that down without it falling off, which turned out to be a lot more difficult than picking it back up, which I have attended the training to start running these workshops, and you could do it as a 2-day live workshop or extending it out to 3 days or however many days. You can run it as an online program over a series of weeks. You could also turn it into a retreat format as well, and I'm excited by all of those options, and we'll probably look at exploring bringing those in to my business plan very soon. So I'd like to take this opportunity. I'd like to take a moment to go through and explain to you what this program is all about and give you a little bit of insight into what we're learning to teach. So this teacher training has come about because Ricky Jane Adams used to teach this program as a live 2-day event. I think it was level 1 and then level 2. And she would fly around to the capital cities and teach this training around the capital cities of Australia, I should say. And then eventually it morphed into an online program, which she ran live. And then eventually she moved from the live version of that to a pre-recorded evergreen version of the 12-week program for the initiate. And what she has decided is her focus is the third level, the 12-month program, and training women to meet themselves as God, as the infinite. And that the time has come for her to hand her baby, which is the initiate program, over to some of the graduates of the Institute to take this work out into the world. And so I'm so honored and so privileged, and I've absolutely, of course, said yes to the opportunity to do this. And we've basically bought the IP, the intellectual property of this program, to be able to teach it. So we've got this beautiful manual that we went through. What I learned really interestingly is it's one thing to do a program, but to then be able to teach it is a whole different kettle of fish. And I was completely stretched, completely expanded, invited to go well beyond my comfort zone, which of course I'm so obsessed with doing. It's where when we meet our fear and we stretch ourselves is when we move ourselves out of that space where we can move out of our cranial brain and into our heart brain, and that is of course the gateway to intuitive intelligence, and that's really exciting. So what I've got here is the course outline, and I'm going to read the lessons to you so that you can get a bit of an idea of what this program is all about, this intuitive intelligence program. So what we've got here is there's a few lessons. There's 7 lessons in here. And what I'm going to do is read them out to you and give you a little bit of an idea as to what's included. In the meantime, behind the scenes, what's happening is I'm going to sit down and look at doing some planning out the final quarter, so October, November, December of 2019, what I'm going to do with that and how I'm going to run it. I'm looking at running a webinar at some point in the next maybe month, during September at some point, running a webinar. And I did a quick little poll on my Facebook business page. If you didn't see it, you can go and have a bit of a scroll through. I asked people, of these 3 topics that I chose, which would you prefer me to do a webinar on? So you can go and pop your vote on there if you like, and then I'll be organising a webinar soon, which is basically just like a little taste test for this. What I've got to decide behind the scenes is what I'm going to then offer people after that webinar, because of course, as you know, with that webinar model, you have an opportunity to then say, if you've enjoyed this and you'd like to do more, here's the next step, and I need to work out what I would like to offer, which is why I haven't set up everything and run with the webinar, because I could set everything up, I've got the systems in place, but I need to decide what that next step is, whether it's a mini workshop, which is a taste test of the full initiate program, the full intuitive intelligence program, or what that looks like. So once I've got that worked out, you'll hear from me about a webinar. Okay, so lesson 1. Lesson 1 is the kinds of intuition. And so this is a really, really interesting lesson. I was going to say module. Really, really interesting lesson, because the kinds of intuition we were taught down in Melbourne over the 4 days of training is brand new content. You actually can't receive this information anywhere. And so I'm very excited to break it down. So we talk about the 2 types of intuition being local and non-local. I'll go into details about that another time. But then we break down within those 2 main types of intuition, there's subsets. And then each of those subsets has a shadow and a light form. And it's really, really fascinating. And what I love about it is the fact that it's not taught anywhere else. You can't find it in Ricky's existing version of this program, because this is new. What she's done is she's done a secondary analysis on the information available from a couple of different sources and pulled this model together, and it's really interesting. So we actually learnt it for the first time in Melbourne, and I'm very, very excited to teach it. So that's what's included in lesson 1, which is the kinds of intuition. Now I'm flicking through my manual to make sure I explain this correctly and in the right order, because as you know, this is all very new. So under those local and non-local categories, there's those subsets, which is just really, really juicy. Then we've got lesson 2, which is the science of intuitive intelligence. And this is one area that I think is really, really fascinating. And I love talking about this. And there's some really cool pieces of research and evidence and experiments that have been done around the science of intuition, especially with the Heart Math Institute. And I'm going to explore a little bit of that for you guys down the track. Then what we've got, there's a couple of cool exercises that we can do with that. Then we've got lesson 3, which is the law of mentalism. Now you'll see if you receive my weekly newsletter, you'll see the header image is me actually teaching the law of mentalism down in Melbourne. We had some opportunities to teach the content, and boy, oh boy, like I said, I was stretched. This is one of the 3 immutable hermetic laws which govern the universe, and when we get our head around these and we can grasp these laws, we can understand how when we break these laws, what happens and the impact of that, and how our lives unfold as a result of whether we are living with these laws or breaking the laws, and how that plays out. I'm being vague on purpose because I don't want to give away all of the juiciness, but the law of mentalism is, for me, what I found to be the trickiest law to teach out of the 3. And so when I had an opportunity to choose what I would teach, I of course chose the area which I was the least comfortable, because of course I wanted the most amount of growth. So you'll see that picture if you're on my newsletter. If you're not, reach out, let me know, send me your email address, and I'll pop you on the list and get that over to you. Lesson 4 is the law of correspondence, and the law of correspondence is that law that talks about as within, so without, as above, so below. And you'll hear me talking about this a lot, and you probably have heard me talk about this, is what's going on inside of us is what's reflected in the world around us, which is why I talk so much and so passionately about your vibration being really important, which is the next lesson. But what's happening inside of you is what's going to happen in the world around you. If you're angry and resentful, you're going to have situations happening in your life around you that will cultivate feeling states of anger and resentment. And we are so powerful, and we don't give ourselves enough credit, because we are so powerful that we create the world around us. And we'll go into that again in another day with another conversation. Lesson 4 is the law of let me try that again. That's lesson 4, which is the law of correspondence. Lesson number 5 is the law of vibration. And we talk about how everything is but a vibration. And how even though we appear to be solid matter and we appear to be 3D, we are in fact but a vibration. And I think that this is really, really interesting, because each of these 3 laws, mentalism, correspondence, and vibration, all build upon one another. Then we have lesson number 6, which is about protection and spiritual protection. I get really passionate about this. This is an opportunity for me to live really congruently, because what we look at with lesson 6 in terms of protection is the need for protection from the world around us, whether that be with crystals or crystal grids, or we need, the answers from the tarot or oracle cards. And this is going to be something that some people will find confronting, because this idea of protection asks us, this module, this lesson asks us to put down our trinkets and to accept that we are that. And that goes back into the law of mentalism. Again, details that I'll give you in a little while. But it leans back into the fact that we are one. We are all part of one consciousness. So there is nothing to be protected of, because you are that. You are that. And that which you see in another is that law of correspondence. So it's going to be a interesting conversation to have, and we lead into discernment with that as well. So lesson 6 is going to be an interesting one. It gets a few bees in bonnets, that one, but I think it's really interesting, because I wholeheartedly agree with Ricky Jane when she talks about this. And there's nothing that we need to be protected from. If we can understand and master these 3 immutable laws, you will understand that there is nothing that you need protection from, because you are one with everything and everyone. And that can be a little confronting for some of us who have placed our power in crystals, trinkets, and those sorts of things. And the last lesson, lesson 7, is about spiritual sight. And this is about how we look at intuitive intelligence as a state of being. And it's that point where you learn to live in that state of being constantly, so that your intuition doesn't look like you sitting down and meditating and then asking a question and then getting a response. It becomes a state of being. And I feel as though I've moved into that state with the training and the practice that I've had, so that I don't even need to ask a question anymore, and I am intuitively guided in every waking moment. And the more I learn to meet my fear, the clearer that connection is and that communication is with the infinite. We also talk about intuition being visual and symbolic. So the fact that clairvoyants don't quite literally see, when you identify as clairvoyant, perhaps as your dominant clair, you don't literally see a figure or a house or something in your sight. It is symbolic. And then we look at exploring those dominant clairs. Are you predominantly clairvoyant, clairsentient, claircognizant, or clairaudient? Which way do you predominantly intuit? We all use all of them, and it gets to the point where oftentimes you can't discern which is one or the other, because you get so used to them all working together. But when you first start this journey, you'll be able to lean into the dominant way in which you intuit, so that you can really build that trust in your own intuitive intelligence. All right, in that last one, we also talk about how the imagination is the bridge. So the 3D being us in our solid form, and the 5D being that non-local intuition, and that way in which we connect the two of those from 3D to 5D is the 4D, and the 4D is imagination. Imagination is the bridge. So that's what we talk about in spiritual sight. So they are the 7 lessons in the Intuitive Intelligence Initiate program. This, as I said, is a prerequisite if you would like to do the 3rd level. If that's something that's on your horizon, and I know for some of you it is, if that tickles your fancy, then I would love for you to come and do the program, the prerequisite program with me. But until such time as I've got it all mapped out, this is all just bubbling away and percolating at the moment. So Thank you so much for the privilege of about 15 minutes of your time to explain this and go through this with you. It is such an honor, such a privilege to be able to bring this work to the world, and I am being called to be so much more congruent with that of what this is, and teaching this and living and breathing this as well, and that intuitive intelligence being a state of being is part of that, but there is so much more to it. All right, beautiful ones, thank you so much for watching. If you have questions, please do send them over. Get in touch, let me know, and for now, stay tuned because I will have some information for you very, very soon. Take care. Bye, guys.